Young millionaire hastily wed a homeless girl to escape an arranged marriage. Unaware she was. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The night everything changed for Ethan Hale didn't look dramatic at first glance. Just another evening where Manhattan glittered like it always did, where limousines lined the curbs outside luxury hotels, and where every guest at the Hale family's engagement gala believed they already knew how the young millionaire's life would unfold. But they were wrong. Ethan stood by the ballroom's side exit, his pulse hammering like a drum in his ears as he stared at the gold-trimmed double doors behind him. On the other side was the woman his family insisted he would marry, a perfect political match, a merger dressed up as romance. And tonight, they expected him to sign the engagement contract, sign his entire future away. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Legacy doesn't wait for feelings, Ethan. You marry for the family, not for yourself. That was the moment Ethan walked out. No plan, no backup, just raw desperation propelling him through the rain-slick streets as he ripped off the velvet bow tie choking his neck. Lightning flashed against puddles on the sidewalk when he finally stopped, breathless, outside a tiny street chapel wedged between a laundromat and a closed deli. He didn't know why he pushed the door open. Maybe it was because the chapel lights were still on. Maybe it was because it looked empty and quiet, something he hadn't felt in months. Or maybe because someone inside needed him as much as he needed an escape. She was curled up on the last pew near the window, hugging an oversized coat that wasn't warm enough for the cold. Wet blonde hair, tired blue eyes, clothes that had clearly been worn far too long. She wasn't crying, but she had that stillness people got only after they'd cried everything out. Ethan froze. She looked up. Their eyes met. And for a split second, both of them flinched, like two strangers who didn't expect to be witnessed in their lowest moment. Sorry, Ethan said awkwardly, pushing a hand through his rain-soaked hair. I didn't know anyone was here. The girl shook her head softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It's okay. I'm just staying out of the cold for a while. The pastor doesn't mind. Ethan hesitated. Something inside him, some instinct he usually ignored, told him not to leave. That this moment mattered. Do you have somewhere to go? He asked. She smiled, but it was the kind that hurt to see. Not really. But don't worry. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. He could see that. And for some reason, her answer tightened something in his chest, something that made the thought of walking away feel impossible. The words flew out of him before logic could stop them. Would you marry me? The girl blinked. Hard. What? Ethan swallowed. I need to get married. Tonight. And I can help you. A home. Safety. Whatever you need. She stared, confusion and fear swirling behind her eyes. You don't even know me. I don't, Ethan admitted. But I know I can't go back in there. And I know you look like someone who deserves a chance as much as I do. Her breath trembled. She looked toward the window where rain streaked down like silver threads, then back at Ethan, this stranger who was offering her a future wrapped in madness. And for a moment, the world outside felt completely still, as if waiting for her answer. The story truly began with that silence. Rain tapped against the stained glass as Lila stared at Ethan, trying to decide whether the stranger in front of her was reckless, dangerous, or simply drowning in the same kind of desperation she had lived with for months. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Why would you choose me?" Ethan swallowed hard, the storm outside echoing his heartbeat. Because everyone in that ballroom wants something from me. You are the only person tonight who looked at me without expecting anything. That truth hit her deeper than he knew. Lila had grown used to being invisible, a ghost passing through alleys and bus shelters, someone people stepped around instead of seeing. And yet here was a man who could have picked any polished socialite in the city, standing in a dim chapel, asking her to save him. If we do this, she said carefully, I need to know you are not playing a game. Ethan shook his head, water dripping from his hair. I promise you, Lila, this is the least fun I have had in my entire life. A tiny breath escaped her, almost a laugh. A crack in her armor. Ethan reached out slowly, placing the cheap silver ring on the pew between them, not touching her, giving her space. "No pressure," he said softly. "If you say no, I will walk away. But if you say yes, I can get you out of the cold tonight. I can help you rebuild your life. And you would help me escape a future I never wanted." Lila looked at the ring. It was something a person might win from a convenience store machine, flimsy and thin, but the way he placed it, careful, respectful, made it feel heavier than gold. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel like a burden. She felt chosen. She closed her fingers around the ring. "Okay," she whispered. "I will do it." Ethan exhaled sharply, relief flooding him. He immediately straightened, pulling himself together as though shifting back into the role of the man he had been raised to be. "There is a courthouse 3 blocks from here," he said. "A night judge is on duty until midnight. We can still make it." Lila stood, still holding her oversized coat tight. When she moved, Ethan noticed how thin she was, how exhaustion clung to her shoulders. "Do you trust me enough to walk with me?" he asked. "I do not trust anyone," she replied honestly. "But I will walk with you anyway." The city greeted them with freezing wind as they stepped out of the chapel together. Ethan shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking. She stiffened, then relaxed into the surprising warmth. They walked side by side through puddled sidewalks and glowing streetlights. He kept a respectful distance, matching her pace. "You do not have to explain everything tonight," Ethan said quietly. "Your past is yours. I will not push." Lila glanced at him, startled by the gentleness. "Most people push," she murmured. "Most people assume." Ethan gave a faint smile. "My entire life has been one assumption after another. People assume I am lucky. People assume I am entitled. People assume I am willing to marry for business. I am tired of being a product. I want to make one choice that is actually mine." His voice broke a little at the end. Lila looked at him differently then, seeing not a millionaire, but a man running from a cage made of gold. As they approached the courthouse steps, rain dripping off the stone columns, Ethan paused. He turned to her with a sincerity that steadied the air between them. "Lila, if at any point you want to walk away, you tell me. I will not hold you to anything." She nodded, tightening her grip on the ring. "Then I think I am ready." He opened the courthouse door for her. Warm air spilled out, and for a moment, Lila felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Neither of them knew it yet, but the next 30 minutes would bind their lives together in ways neither contract nor desperation could fully explain. The courthouse corridors smelled faintly of old paper and lemon floor polish as Ethan guided Lila toward the night judge's chamber, his steps steady despite the storm raging behind his ribcage. Lila walked half a step behind him, clutching her oversized coat and the cheap silver ring like it was a lifeline. Every light overhead flickered softly, casting long reflections across the polished tiles. Her heartbeat echoed louder than her footsteps. She had never set foot in a courthouse before tonight, certainly not to get married. A clerk with gray hair and half-moon glasses looked up as they approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, glancing between Ethan's soaked dress shirt and Lila's worn coat. He cleared his throat. "We need a marriage license. Tonight." The clerk raised one eyebrow, unimpressed, but not surprised. "Plenty of folks come here at night with big feelings. Sit tight. I will notify Judge Ramos." They took their seats on a wooden bench. Rain pattered against the tall windows, a steady rhythm that filled the silence between them. After a moment, Lila whispered, "This does not feel real." Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Nothing in my life has felt real for a long time. This is the first thing that does." She looked at him then, really looked. His hair was still wet from the storm, his shirt clinging to his shoulders, but his eyes held a mixture of nerves and sincerity that made her chest tighten. She had met wealthy men before, usually when they were tossing loose change toward homeless people without making eye contact. Ethan was nothing like them. A courtroom door creaked open, and Judge Ramos stepped out, wearing a navy robe and holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. "Marriage license?" she asked. Ethan stood. "Yes, ma'am. We understand it is unusual, but—" The judge waved her hand. "Unusual is the only thing that happens here after 10 p.m. She gestured them into her chamber. The room was small and warm, cluttered with stacks of folders and a bookshelf filled with framed photographs of families, graduations, and former cases. Lila felt suddenly aware of everything she was not. No family, no home, No framed memories. Judge Ramos read through the license form, eyes narrowing only once when she asked, "Full legal name?" Lila hesitated, then answered softly, "Lila Jennings." Ethan glanced at her, surprised. She had not given him her last name until now. The judge stamped the document, then looked up at both of them. Marriage is not something you walk into lightly. Even rushed marriages leave marks. "Are you two certain?" Ethan answered first. "Yes." His voice did not waver. Lila exhaled shakily. "Yes." Judge Ramos nodded, satisfied enough. She stood, lifting the small ceremonial script from her desk. "All right then. Face each other." Lila turned toward Ethan, her breath catching as he gently took her hands. His palms were warm, steady, grounding. The judge began speaking, her voice calm and measured, but the words seemed to blur around the edges as Lila focused on the man standing before her. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the hope, the fear, and the strange tenderness that had taken root between them in only 1 hour. When the judge said, "Do you, Ethan Hale, take Lila Jennings?" he answered without hesitation. "I do." Lila swallowed the lump in her throat. When it came her turn, she felt her legs tremble, but her voice rose anyway. "I do." Judge Ramos closed the book. "By the authority vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife." A soft silence followed. Ethan let out a breath like he had been holding it since the day he was born. He slid the thin silver ring onto Lila's finger, his fingers brushing hers in a way that made her heart skip. She whispered, "This is insane." He whispered back, "Yes. But so is every major decision in my life." They walked out of the chamber together, the signed marriage certificate tucked in an envelope under Ethan's arm. The clerk gave them a nod that felt almost approving. When they pushed open the courthouse doors, the rain had slowed to a mist, the city lights glimmering on the wet pavement. For the first time that night, Lila stepped willingly closer to Ethan as he offered his hand, and she took it. Not because of the contract, not because of the ring, but because in that fleeting moment, standing in the quiet glow of a courthouse at midnight, she felt unexpectedly, impossibly safe. The ride to Ethan's penthouse was quieter than either expected, the city sweeping past the car windows in streaks of yellow and blue as midnight settled over Manhattan. Lila sat rigidly in the back seat, her fingers brushing the silver ring that still felt unreal on her hand. Ethan glanced at her occasionally, not wanting to overwhelm her, but also unable to ignore the weight of what they had just done. "You are safe now," he said softly, as if trying to steady both of them. "Whatever happens next, you will not be alone in it." Lila nodded, though the words felt distant, like they were meant for someone else. When the driver pulled up to a glittering glass building along the Upper West Side, she blinked in disbelief. "You live here?" she whispered. Ethan cleared his throat. "Yes, but do not let it scare you. It is just walls and windows." To her, it looked like another universe entirely. Inside the lobby, marble floors gleamed beneath golden chandeliers, and the warmth hit her instantly after the cold night air. A concierge greeted Ethan by name, but his eyes flicked to Lila with a curiosity she had grown used to in life, yet hated all the same. She held her coat tighter, suddenly aware of how out of place she looked. Ethan stepped slightly in front of her, blocking the man's stare. "She is with me," he said firmly. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Lila watched the numbers climb until the doors opened to a private hallway with only one door. Ethan unlocked it, and the penthouse lights hummed to life. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing the entire Manhattan skyline. Lila froze at the threshold, overwhelmed. "If you want me to stay somewhere else." "No." Ethan interrupted gently. "You stay here. It is part of our agreement, and I meant what I said. You deserve a place that is warm." Lila stepped inside slowly, unsure where she was allowed to look or walk. The penthouse was immaculate, almost too pristine, as if no one truly lived there. She trailed her fingers over the back of the sofa. "Everything is so quiet." Ethan let out a low breath. "It is always quiet here." The loneliness in his tone surprised her more than the luxury did. He walked toward a cabinet near the kitchen and retrieved a folder. "Before you sleep, there is something we need to go over. It is the terms for our arrangement." Lila sat on the couch, bracing herself. He joined her, placing the folder between them. "There are only 4 rules," he said. "No lying to each other. Attend 5 public events with me over the next 30 days. Do not reveal the truth about our marriage. And after 30 days, you can choose to leave with full independence and financial stability. Lila looked up sharply. Financial stability? Yes, Ethan said calmly. A fresh start. Enough for you to not go back to the streets. Her throat tightened. Nobody had ever offered her anything without expecting more in return. What do you get from me? She asked quietly. Ethan let out a long exhale. My family's board is holding a vote next month. If they believe I am stable, mature, and building a life of my choosing, I keep control of my company. They cannot force me into the arranged marriage if I am already married. You help me hold on to the one thing in my life that I actually built on my own. Lila absorbed his words. A marriage born from desperation, now tied to a future she never imagined. All right, she said slowly, but I will not be your puppet. If I agree to those events, I want to be treated with respect. Ethan met her eyes with a sincerity that made her chest warm. Lila, you will not be my puppet. You will be my partner. Partner. The word landed gently, almost tenderly. Ethan stood to show her the guest room, but she hesitated. Why is the master bedroom dark? Ethan paused. I do not sleep well in there, he admitted, almost embarrassed. Too many expectations packed into one space. He gestured to the guest room. Here, you will be safe. Lila stepped inside, running her hand over the clean sheets. I do not remember the last time I slept in a real bed, she whispered. Then start remembering tonight, Ethan said softly from the doorway. Good night, Lila. She turned off the light, lying down slowly as if the mattress might disappear beneath her. As she pulled the blanket around herself, she glanced at the silver ring again. Married to a millionaire. Housed in a penthouse. Protected by a stranger. Nothing made sense. And yet, for the first time in months, she let her eyes close without fear. Out in the hallway, Ethan lingered for a moment, staring at her closed door with a quiet resolve settling into his chest. Their marriage had begun as an escape, but something else was beginning to breathe between them, something neither of them could name yet. Something real. Morning sunlight spilled across the penthouse windows like a quiet invitation as Lila blinked awake, momentarily forgetting where she was. The bed beneath her felt impossibly soft, the air warm and still, nothing like the shelters or park benches she had curled up on during the long nights of the past year. For a moment, she lay completely still, clutching the blanket as the reality of last night drifted back to her in pieces. She was married. Married to Ethan Hale, a millionaire who had pulled her out of the cold and into a world she had never belonged to. She sat up slowly, running her hand through her tangled hair. The silver ring caught the morning light, making her heart skip. She had agreed to help him, and he had agreed to give her safety, but neither of them truly knew what came next. When she opened the bedroom door, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the hallway. Ethan was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a shower, attempting to flip pancakes with the kind of determination reserved for a man used to fighting boardrooms, not frying pans. He glanced up, startled. Good morning. I was trying to make breakfast, but I think the pancakes are winning. Lila blinked, amused despite herself. You cook. Not well, Ethan admitted. But I am trying. It felt weird to have you wake up with nothing. She moved closer, noticing the small mess of flour on the counter, splattered batter on the stovetop, and Ethan's earnest expression. Something warm tugged at her chest. I can help if you want, she said. Together they finished breakfast, something simple but warm, and Ethan insisted she eat first. She did, though part of her was still unsure whether she had the right to sit at such a polished marble island. After they finished, Ethan brought out a garment bag that had been delivered earlier. There is a charity luncheon today, he said gently. It is not one of the big events yet, but it is public. If you feel ready, we can use it as our first appearance. Lila tensed. People will stare. They will know I do not belong. Ethan shook his head. They will stare because they are trained to care about appearances. But you belong anywhere you choose to be. The sincerity in his tone unsettled her, touching a part of her that had been ignored for too long. She opened the garment bag, revealing a simple but elegant navy dress. Not flashy, not extravagant, something that looked like her. I chose it because it reminded me of strength, Ethan said quietly. Not wealth. She swallowed, unable to find words. When she stepped out wearing the dress an hour later, Ethan froze in the hallway. You look His voice faded, unable to finish the sentence. She glanced down, embarrassed. Do I look wrong? No, he said quickly. You look like someone who deserves to be seen. The car ride to the luncheon felt different from the night before. There was no storm, no desperation, only a quiet tension and the unspoken awareness of the promise they were stepping into. Outside the event venue, cameras flashed as soon as Ethan stepped out. He moved to Lila's side instantly, offering his arm. Are you ready? He whispered. She took a slow breath. I will try. She looped her arm through his. The moment she stepped onto the carpet beside him, the chatter around them shifted, eyes narrowing, whispers rising. Lila felt the heat of shame creep up her spine, but Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Ignore them, he murmured. They know nothing about you. Inside, a woman dripping in diamonds approached them, her smile sharp. Ethan, darling, you brought someone new. And who might this be? Lila stiffened, but Ethan did not hesitate. This is my wife, Lila Hale. The woman blinked, stunned. Lila saw the shock ripple across the room like a silent wave. Ethan leaned down just slightly, his voice soft enough for only her to hear. You are doing great. She met his eyes, surprised by the steady warmth there. In that moment, she realized something had changed. He was no longer just the man who married her out of desperation. He was a man choosing to stand beside her, not in front of her. And for the first time since they met, Lila felt a spark of courage rise within her, a quiet understanding that their bargain was becoming something far more complicated than either had intended. The luncheon hall buzzed with soft conversation and the clinking of polished silverware as Lila stood beside Ethan, trying to steady her breathing. She had survived the first wave of stares, survived the sharp smiles, and the subtle flicks of judgment in people's eyes, but every step she took felt like walking on thin ice. Ethan guided her through the crowd with a protective ease, his hand lightly resting at the small of her back, not possessive, just steady. You are doing perfectly, he whispered, and the quiet confidence in his voice eased something tight in her chest. They reached their assigned table, where several donors and executives waited. A man in a tailored navy suit stood and extended a hand to Ethan. Ethan Hale, I heard rumors you were finally settling down. Did not believe them until now. His gaze shifted to Lila with a veneer of politeness that barely masked condescension. And you are? Before Lila could react, Ethan responded calmly, my wife, Lila Hale. The man's eyebrows flicked upward for a split second, but he recovered quickly. Well, welcome. I suppose congratulations are in order. Lila offered a small nod, her stomach twisting, but Ethan gently pulled her chair out for her before taking his seat beside her. As courses were served, she listened more than she spoke, absorbing snippets of conversations about investments, philanthropic partnerships, and vacation homes. She had never felt more out of place. Then something unexpected happened. A woman across the table mentioned a struggling community art program that was losing funding, and Lila's attention snapped into focus. The woman sighed. These kids have talent. But without sponsors, the place will close next month. Lila leaned in slightly. What kind of art program? The woman glanced at her, surprised by her interest. Painting and mixed media. It is small, but it matters to them. Lila nodded slowly, her mind racing. She had once been part of a place like that, years before her life unraveled. She knew exactly what it meant to have something that kept you grounded, something that made you feel human. Ethan noticed the change in her. You care about this, he murmured quietly. Lila hesitated, then admitted, I do. That kind of place can change someone's entire future. Ethan's expression softened, and he turned back to the woman. Send me the proposal. I want to take a look. The woman's eyes widened. Truly, truly, Ethan said, glancing at Lila with a faint smile. Warmth filled her chest, unexpected and confusing. When luncheon staff dimmed the lights for the keynote presentation, Lila felt Ethan shift beside her. He leaned closer. Thank you, he whispered. She frowned lightly. For what? For showing me what matters, he said. For grounding me in a room where everyone else floats above reality. Lila felt her cheeks warm. She looked away, but not fast enough to hide her small smile. After the event, as they slipped out a back entrance to avoid the lingering cameras, Lila exhaled deeply. That was overwhelming. Ethan nodded. Yes, but you handled yourself better than half the people in that room. She let out a shaky breath. I felt like I was going to say the wrong thing at every moment. Even if you had, he said, you would have still been the most genuine person in that room. The car ride back to the penthouse was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Lila stared out the window at the blur of the city, her thoughts tangled. This marriage was supposed to be a transaction, a temporary agreement, a performance. So why did Ethan's kindness make something inside her ache? And why did every time he looked at her, she feel seen in a way she had not felt in years? When they reached the penthouse, Ethan held the door open for her. She stepped inside, hesitating near the living room. Ethan, she said softly, I do not know how to exist in your world. He paused, studying her. You do not have to exist in my world, Lila. We will build something between the two of us, something that works. Her breath caught at the tenderness in his voice. She felt unsteady, as if one more gentle word from him might break down every wall she had built to survive. She shifted her gaze toward the city lights. I never imagined I would end up here. Ethan stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. And I never imagined marrying someone who actually makes me breathe easier. Lila's heart thudded. This was not part of the contract. This feeling, this closeness, this quiet, growing gravity between them. She turned to him slowly, unable to hide the softness in her expression. Ethan's eyes held hers for a long moment, warm and searching, before he whispered, whatever this is, we will figure it out together. And Lila, against every instinct she had honed on the streets, believed him. For a while, life inside the penthouse settled into a rhythm that neither Ethan nor Lila expected. Days passed with a strange calm. They shared quiet breakfasts, attended small events, and spent evenings talking about everything and nothing as the city glowed beneath them. It felt almost normal, almost easy. But calm never lasts long in a world built on power, money, and family expectations. And the storm began on a Thursday morning. Ethan was in the kitchen brewing coffee when his phone buzzed with a message from his cousin Victoria, the family's chief financial officer. Her text was as cold as her reputation. Emergency board meeting. Bring your wife. Ethan frowned, tension tightening across his shoulders. Lila walked in moments later, still tying her hair back. Is everything all right? He forced a calm smile. Yes, just family business. But you need to come with me today. Why do I feel like that is not a good thing? She asked softly. He did not answer, because he already knew. When they arrived at the Hale corporate tower, the air inside the sleek marble lobby felt sharp enough to slice. Staff members greeted Ethan with respect, but their eyes flickered to Lila with blatant curiosity and thinly veiled judgment. She held Ethan's arm a little tighter. In the boardroom on the 43rd floor, Victoria sat at the head of the long table, her crisp suit and icy expression making her look like royalty carved from glass. Ethan, she said coolly, and Lila. Lila lowered her eyes politely. Victoria clasped her manicured hands. We need to address the matter of your sudden marriage. Ethan's jaw tightened. There is nothing to address. I made a decision. Victoria smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Yes, a decision that jeopardizes the stability of this company. You married someone no one knows. Someone with no background, no financial records, no employment history, no family connections. Lila felt heat crawl up her neck. Ethan leaned forward sharply. Lila is my wife. That is all that matters. Is it? Victoria tapped a folder on the table. Because someone with no past is usually hiding one. She opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed Lila sitting on a sidewalk weeks before, knees tucked to her chest, wrapped in her oversized coat. Lila's breath hitched. Shame crashed through her like a wave. Victoria continued, her voice cool. A homeless girl, Ethan. This is who you married. While that is charitable, it does not align with the image required of the future head of Hale Industries. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Do not talk about her like she is a stain on this family. Lila flinched at the anger in his voice, not because it frightened her, but because it was aimed at protecting her. Victoria did not even blink. Then perhaps explain this. She clicked a button on a small remote. A screen lit up behind her, displaying blurry surveillance footage. Lila froze as she recognized the scene. It was the alley behind a local shelter. She was speaking to a man she once knew from the streets, someone who had offered her food in exchange for information about wealthy donors. She had refused every time. But the footage captured only the moment he handed her something, a folded piece of paper that she had thrown away. Victoria paused the frame. It looks like she is passing information. Perhaps about you, Ethan. Lila gasped. No, that is not what happened. He was trying to pull me into his scheme. I never agreed. But the room felt hostile. Doubt seeped in like smoke. Ethan shook his head firmly. I trust her. This means nothing. Victoria rose slowly, circling the table like a predator. Your trust is not what concerns me. The board is voting on leadership transition next month. If they see you as reckless, easily manipulated, or blinded by emotional decisions, they will strip your authority. And if Lila is seen as a liability, the vote will not be in your favor. She stopped behind Lila, voice dripping with false pity. This marriage may cost you everything, Ethan. Lila felt something inside her crack. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the polished floor. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. Maybe she is right. He turned sharply. Lila, no. Do not listen to her. But Lila's eyes were already filling with tears. I never wanted to hurt you. And I cannot be the reason you lose everything. Maybe I should go. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan's breath caught, his eyes darkening with panic. Lila, do not do this. Victoria folded her arms, victorious. But Lila stepped back from Ethan, her heart breaking as she whispered, I need to protect you, even if it means leaving. And before he could stop her, she turned and walked out of the boardroom, the silver ring glinting under the fluorescent lights as she disappeared through the glass doors. The elevator doors slid shut before Ethan could reach them, trapping his reflection in the metal surface as if mocking him. His chest tightened with a panic he had not felt since he was a boy. Lila was leaving, and not because she wanted to, but because someone had convinced her that she was unworthy of staying. He spun around, fury and desperation mixing in his voice. Victoria, what you did was unforgivable. She raised an eyebrow, unfazed. I did what was necessary to protect the company. If you cannot see that, you are not ready to lead it. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low and steady. No, what you did was manipulate a woman who has suffered more than you will ever understand. And you did it because you are afraid. Afraid that I will run this company with a heart, not an iron fist like you. Victoria's smirk faltered for the first time, but Ethan did not stay to savor it. He bolted out of the boardroom doors, rushing through the hallway, scanning for any sign of Lila. But she was gone. Lila's footsteps echoed through the marble lobby as she walked as fast as she could, wiping away tears that refused to stop. She pushed through the revolving doors and stepped into the brisk afternoon air, her vision blurred. She needed distance. She needed time. She needed to breathe. She headed down the street, blending into the crowd, each step feeling heavier than the last. She reached a small park several blocks away and sank onto a bench, her hands trembling as she pressed her palms against her face. She hated how powerless she felt. She hated how easily shame clung to her skin. And she hated that Ethan had defended her so fiercely. It made leaving feel like tearing herself apart. I am only dragging him down, she whispered to herself. I am nothing but a reminder of everything he is trying to escape. But even as she said the words, something resisted inside her. Something that remembered the way Ethan looked at her, not with pity or embarrassment, but with a kind of respect she had never known. Still, she believed she was doing the right thing. For him. For his future. She had no idea that Ethan was already searching every street she might have walked down. By late afternoon, Ethan returned to the penthouse, heart pounding, mind racing. He needed answers. He needed truth. And he needed to clear Lila's name. He opened his laptop, pulling up internal security access and cross-referencing timestamps. It took him only minutes to find the original footage. He watched it closely, over and over. Lila's body language was defensive, not conspiratorial. The man shoved something toward her. She shoved it back. She turned away. She refused him. Everything Victoria had shown was cut and spliced. A manipulation. A lie. Ethan's hands curled into fists. She was telling the truth all along, he whispered. Rage simmered inside him, but beneath it was something else. Something sharper. Fear of losing her. Determination surged through him. He grabbed his keys, ready to tear through the city again, when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered immediately. Ethan Hale. The voice on the line was shaky, older, but kind. Mr. Hale, my name is Father Collins. I run the small chapel on Fifth Avenue. Your wife, she is here. Ethan's breath caught. Is she all right? She is shaken, and she thinks leaving you will solve everything. Ethan closed his eyes, relief and heartbreak washing over him in equal measure. I am on my way. 10 minutes later, Ethan pushed open the chapel doors. The familiar quiet welcomed him, along with the soft glow of candlelight. Lila sat in the same pew where they first met, her shoulders hunched, the silver ring twisting anxiously between her fingers. She did not see him at first. She looked lost, small, and utterly heartbroken. Lila, he said softly. Her head snapped up, surprise flooding her features. Ethan, you should not be here. You should be with your family, fixing things. He walked toward her slowly, as if closing the distance between them too fast might break her. I'm fixing things, starting with the truth. She shook her head, tears forming again. Victoria is right. I am only going to ruin everything for you. Ethan knelt in front of her, his voice firm. No, she is wrong. You did nothing wrong. The footage she showed was manipulated. I saw the original. You refused that man. You walked away. You were protecting yourself, not hurting me. Lila's breath hitched. Why would she do that? Because she is afraid of losing control, he said gently. And because she saw something between us she did not understand. Something between us? Lila whispered, barely daring to ask. Ethan reached out, his fingers brushing hers with a tenderness that made her heart shake. Lila, I did not marry you for show anymore. Not after everything we have been through. I choose you, not because I need you to save me, but because I want you beside me. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she stared at him, overwhelmed. He squeezed her hands, grounding her. Come home with me, he whispered. Let us stand together. Let us fight this together. For the first time since she fled the boardroom, Lila let herself breathe. She nodded slowly, hope flickering through her eyes. Ethan, I want to. And without hesitation, Ethan rose and wrapped his arm around her, finally certain of one thing. He was not leaving this chapel without his wife. The drive back to the penthouse was different this time. Lila sat beside Ethan, not as someone being rescued, not as someone running away, but as someone choosing to stay. The city lights slid past the windows like soft strokes of gold, reflecting the quiet resolve growing between them. When they reached the penthouse, Ethan held the door for her the same way he had on their first night. But now the gesture felt intimate, layered with everything they had just fought through together. Inside, Lila paused, the weight of the past 24 hours settling on her shoulders. Ethan watched her gently. You are home, he said softly. The word home made something tighten in her throat, because it was the first time anyone had said it to her with sincerity in years. Ethan guided her to the couch and sat across from her, his expression serious. Lila, tomorrow I am facing the board, and I want you beside me. She hesitated. After everything they said? After what Victoria did? Especially after that, Ethan replied. They need to see the truth. They need to see who you are. And they need to see that I stand with you by choice, not by desperation. Lila swallowed hard. What if they still reject me? What if they still think I am not enough? Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady. Then I will remind them that leadership is not about bloodlines or polished resumes. It is about integrity, and you have more of it than the entire board combined. Something inside her softened. She reached for his hand, almost without thinking, and Ethan held hers gently, as if it were something fragile and irreplaceable. The next morning, the Hale Industries boardroom was packed. Executives, shareholders, senior staff members, and Victoria, sitting like a queen who expected to win the crown. Cameras were set up for internal documentation. The atmosphere buzzed with tension. When Ethan walked in, the room quieted. And when Lila walked in beside him, the whispers started. But she kept her chin high, her step steady, her hand loosely holding Ethan's. Victoria cleared her throat. Ethan, before we begin, I hope you reconsider bringing unnecessary distractions into this meeting. Ethan squeezed Lila's hand lightly before releasing it and stepping forward. I brought my wife because she deserves to hear the truth spoken out loud. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Victoria's eyes narrowed. This is not the time for sentimental theatrics. Ethan ignored her and pulled up the screen behind him. The original security footage played. Untouched. Unmanipulated. Completely clear. Lila refusing the man in the alley. Pushing him away. Walking off. Silence blanketed the room. Ethan turned to the board, voice steady. This is who my wife is. Honest. Strong. And targeted because she does not fit your manufactured idea of what a Hale should look like. He scanned the room. But I am done letting other people decide my life. I am done letting fear dictate leadership. And if this board cannot respect the woman I chose to marry, then the board does not deserve me. A murmur swept across the room. Victoria stiffened, but her eyes flickered with uncertainty. Ethan continued, Lila is not a liability. She is the only person in this room who sees me as something more than a walking inheritance. She is the only one who has nothing to gain from me except the truth. His voice softened, warm. And she is the only one I want beside me. Not because of this company, not because of the last name Hale, but because she is the best decision I have ever made. A senior board member cleared his throat. Ethan, if the footage is real, then the accusations were unfounded. And Mrs. Hale, he turned toward Lila. You have our apology. Lila nodded, her voice soft but clear. Thank you. Another board member spoke up. We vote on leadership next week. Today, you both showed strength. And that says more about this company's future than any arranged marriage ever could. Victoria's expression collapsed into silent defeat. She knew the vote had already shifted. After the meeting, reporters waiting outside snapped photos as Ethan and Lila stepped out of the building. But this time, Ethan took Lila's hand openly, confidently, not as part of a performance, but as a promise. Ethan, she whispered, what happens now? He smiled softly. Now we stop pretending. When they returned to the penthouse that evening, the sun was setting in streaks of orange and pink across the skyline. Ethan walked Lila to the balcony, the city stretching endlessly below them. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the cheap silver ring they had bought that night in the storm. This ring saved me, he said quietly. But you saved me more. Lila's breath caught. Ethan dropped to one knee, not rushed, not desperate, but certain. Lila Jennings Hale, he said, marry me again. This time, not as a contract, but as my partner, my equal, my choice. Tears filled her eyes, but she laughed softly. Ethan, I'm married. You in a courthouse with a $5 ring. I can marry you for real. He slipped the ring onto her finger again, and she pulled him into a breathless embrace. Somewhere far below, the city kept moving, uncaring. But up on that balcony, two people who were never meant to meet had rewritten everything. Their story had begun as an escape. It ended as a promise. And for the first time in their lives, both Ethan and Lila stepped into a future they had chosen together.